What fan theory about a movie, TV show, or video game do you see as 100% canon? Futurama, Bender was not always a criminal, but got a reset and reprogram in the Hall of Prisoners. In the pilot, he was upset that he was making machines that humans use to kill themselves. Then, he gets an electric shock in the Hall of Prisoners, and takes on a whole new attitude. This new attitude of steal everything and kill all humans does not fit with his original persona in the pilot. This possibility is supported in a later episode. He gets rebooted in the Pluto Penguin Conservatory, and takes on the identity of a penguin. Edit: wow, this blew up. I have a theory that Olaf is an extension of Elsa's consciousness. Everything he does is really Elsa trying to help her sister. Yeah, I think that's pretty much canon. He repeats things he heard the sisters say to each other, like "the sky's awake and I like warm hugs," and displays some very Elsa-like behavior as the movie goes on. "Because I love you I insist you run," and nearly melting trying to warm Anna up. His sole desire at the start of his life is to experience summer, something Elsa would never have gotten to do growing up, and in Olaf's Frozen adventure, he wants to take part in all of the Christmas festivities that she couldn't. He has a childish personality because a part of Elsa never really moved on from when she was 8. Marshmallow represents her desire to be left alone and safe. He looks and acts intimidating, and lashes out when he feels threatened, even if the threat is actually minor, but is ultimately kind. George Weasley is actually Willy Wonka. In the books, we see that Fred and George make all sorts of crazy candy and they are really good at it. So things like the snoozeberries and the gobstoppers are not far-fetched. Plus the whole place is candy and the last scene with the elevator can only be explained by magic. But Fred dies and George cannot handle being surrounded by wizards all the time, so he goes to live with the Muggles and becomes a recluse. The Oompa Loompas can easily be house elves. Plus George and Wonka look very similar and they dress alike. Wonka makes a few comments about not being able to hear correctly and we know George had his ear cut off. If you think about it, he was halfway there with Fred, having made a successful shop called Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes. Triple W, and then from there Willy Wonka. Double W. He clearly kept the W's. And my favorite part is that in Wonka's office everything is cut in half. George never got over Fred's death, he never felt whole, so nothing in his life can be whole. George is missing his other half. Bruce Banner has died several times in the MCU, but the Hulk effectively resurrected him each time. In the Avengers, he claims that the Hulk spat out a bullet when Banner attempted suicide. In Age of Ultron, Black Widow pushes Banner down a deep hole. The Hulk jumps back out. In Thor Ragnarok, Banner jumps from a ship and lands headfirst on the Rainbow Bridge. We see him lie there motionless. But a few seconds later, Hulk is fighting the giant wolf. The other guy keeps saving his life. Pikachu is not the original one Ash was given. In short, initially Pikachu disobeys Ash, but then on the second episode, Ash faints and Pikachu is gone with a huge group of Shu all looking identical. At the end of the episode they are back together, but Pikachu is nice and friendly. Theory claims the original Pikachu escaped, and a wild one wanting a trainer came instead, with Ash missing the switch. Also, on the episode before that, the Pokédex clearly says that wild Pokémon are often jealous of Pokémon with a trainer, which may be a hint. Here's a really good detailed explanation of this theory with additional reinforcements I didn't mention. I've always had the theory, and I'm sure others have thought of it, but I haven't seen it said on Reddit, that PBS funneled money to the Scranton branch in The Office because they saw the potential they had with a branch that had such characters. Every other branch seemed pretty normal and it was a failing company to begin with, so corporate probably didn't mind, in fact may have even encouraged it. This because A, publicity, and B, they were probably getting paid to allow the documentary to be done, hence more revenue. This is why whenever the branch was close to closing, random occurrences forced it to stay open, and why despite Michael's ineptitude as a manager the Scranton branch always had the best sales. Yeah, they have Dwight, who appears to be amazing, top salesman of any branch, but Jim doesn't give a shit. Stanley is asleep for half the day. Pam/Ryan literally never made a sale. Does that sound like a top producing branch to you? Anyway, this is a theory I've only loosely thought of, but it all makes sense to me. TL, Doctor, in the office PBS was paying the Scranton branch under the table, or perhaps buying all their paper, in order to keep them afloat to keep the documentary going. Edit, I believe this theory has been debunked twice over. But Michael was actually a scary good salesman. It's so easy to write him off as a bumbling idiot, but he consistently proves people underestimate him. Jan didn't think his tactics would win the county school board contract, but they did. Nobody thought Michael Scott Paper Company would succeed, but they almost put DM Scranton out of business, and then he convinced DM to hire them back. On Pretzel Day he goofed around most of the day, and then at the 0-hour lockdown, a huge sale, he also signed a deal with Hammermill, who were exclusive to Staples, and brushed it off like it was nothing. Michael may be oafish and annoying, but there's no denying his talent as a salesman. In Infinity War, Thanos was going to execute Tony ceremoniously. Before Strange stopped him, Thanos had all 4 currently possessed stones primed. That means each stone had a purpose in the execution of an already downed human. Up until that point, Thanos had only been killing who he needs to, and only decided to kill Tony after he made him bleed, almost as a show of respect that he is a threat now. So when Thanos says "I hope they remember you," I think he means literally, because he's about to kill him with the Power/Soul Stone, clean him up with the Reality Stone, and send his body back to Earth with the Space Stone. The brown-haired mermaid who appears in Disney's Peter Pan is Ariel's mother and was crushed to death under Captain Hook's ship. Yes, Peter Pan was released 36 years before The Little Mermaid. But Disney has been known to retroactively make details like that into canon, such as when they declared Goofy Jr. to be the same character as Max. Then again, none of the Disney DTV sequels were ever intended as canon, just money grabs, and that's the only real source we have for any info on Ariel's mother. Still, I like to imagine there being a connection between the mermaids in Peter Pan and Ariel's family somehow. One I came up with myself. In the MCU, Asgard is an ancient spaceship or space station, so old that even the Asgardians themselves have forgotten what it is, and just refer to it as their home. In Thor 1, Thor himself makes reference to the union of magic and science in Asgard. The Bifrost is connected to the central core via a power conduit that looks like a bridge, and when activated is mechanical in nature. In Thor 2 they activate defense mechanisms such as energy shields, weapons turrets etc. In Thor 3 Surtur destroys Asgard by piercing its heart with his sword. And for heart, read power core. It's like rupturing a warp core in Star Trek, instantaneous annihilation. And through all 3 there are hints at Asgard's true nature. The architecture is metallic. The saucer shape with gravity acting like an artificial gravity field is very sci-fi, the stasis pod for Odin, the shield control console and so on. Spoilers for Firewatch. Firewatch, my theory is that for the whole game, Delilah was intentionally being dishonest with and gaslighting Henry the closer he got to discovering that Ned was still living in the park, because I believe Delilah knew he was living there, possibly as a favor for Ned. The way I perceived things, I think that Brian truly did fall on accident, even if it was due to Ned's negligence. And as a result, I think Ned couldn't find it in himself to leave the place where his son had died, whether it be from feeling attached to the area and being unable to leave, not wanting to face the music and get the police involved, or a combination of the two. I think Ned likely came up with some convoluted lie to tell Delilah so that she'd let him stay. And since Delilah liked Brian so much as well as Ned, I think she'd likely be willing to keep it between them that Ned was still in the park. I don't believe she knew that Brian was dead. I think she likely assumes that Ned sent him back home for the school year with other family members watching him. I don't think she ever thought the situation would escalate as much as it did, especially with the events of the game taking place when Henry arrives. This is why I think her reaction of disbelief, anger, and grief at the end when Henry informs her that he found Brian in the cave was genuine. She personally feels, on top of the loss of a kid she truly liked, betrayed. From her reaction, we can clearly see she thinks Ned killed Brian, and she likely feels ashamed, guilty, and angered for letting him stay in the park, because this would mean she somehow helped the person, in her mind, who killed Brian. Compared to the very real emotions she exudes at the end of the game, during the rising actions of the story, she's very slow to believe, trying to stall and act like she's confused, or like Henry's jumping to conclusions, in a lot of the events that occur to Henry throughout his time at the park. Like finding the clipboard, or getting hit over the head, or not taking him seeing the figure, who was Ned, at night near his tower seriously. This was written when the first 3 Star Wars films were the only 3. It's a work of comedy, so please don't nitpick Star Wars lore or the lore, the guy who wrote it first. This one was from a very old post on the Branching Shuttlecocks by Lars Jorberg. I can't find it anymore, but it was called The Luke Side of the Force, so I am paraphrasing. So in the first film, we see Obi-Wan holding his own against Vader until Luke shows up. Then Ben gives up and lets Vader kill him. What do we see in the second film? Obi-Wan has an immortal magic ghost body. So he goes in his ghost form to his buddy Yoda and tells him about this amazing afterlife he got from dying in front of Luke, and Yoda says, "Hey, I'm old as shit and I'm about to die. Send that boy over here." Immortal ghost Obi-Wan does so. That is going well for a bit, and Yoda is working his ass off to die in front of Luke with heavy force use and jumps and flips and stuff. Doesn't work. Luke gets it in his pants to go leave, and Yoda and Obi-Wan are pissed, but he leaves anyway. Vader and Palpatine somehow get wind of this cool afterlife that Force users get when they croak in front of this boy, and they want in on the action too. Vader tries his best to put on a good show to get Luke to saber him well, but Vader gets too into it and beats Luke's hand off. Too bad. Vader goes into begging mode just like Yoda and Obi-Wan, but Luke doesn't listen to anyone and jumps. Luke returns to Yoda just in time to watch the little green Muppet croak, so Yoda gets his dream of a magic ghost body. Palps and Vader step up their game. They invite Luke for tea, and then Darth Wrinkles just goes out and says, "Kill me. I want to die in front of you." Luke knows there's something up with that, so resists. He keeps taunting him, and finally Luke swings his zappy baton at him, but Vader jumps in with a good hard me first. And they fight. Luke gets really close to giving Vader his dream, but Emperor mindfuckery wants all the attention. It still doesn't work. So Emperor goes all zappy on Kid Jedi, and Vader starts to see the opportunity of his awesome afterlife fading before his eyes. He takes action and tosses Goth Lightning into the conveniently located tunnel energy, doing 2 things: 1, robbing Palps of his ghost, and 2, draining the last life out of Vader to make sure Vader gets his. What do we see at the end of Jedi? Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin, portrayed by Prowse in my head. I know it was actually Sebastian Shaw, in their cool afterlife bodies. It's not about a heroic epic of redemption of Vader. It's about people wanting to die in front of Luke. I'm paraphrasing here since it's been forever since I read the theory, but shortly after the fall of the Republic and the secreting away of Anakin Skywalker's newborn children, an agreement was struck between Obi-Wan Kenobi, Chewbacca, and R2-D2 to put themselves into a position to guard over those children and watch them. To A. protect them from Vader, the Emperor, and more importantly to B. watch and see if they show any Force sensitivity, and seem to be following in their father's footsteps. If they showed Force sensitivity and seemed well adjusted, they could be taken into hand and trained into the first of a new order of secret Jedi. If they showed evidence of following Vader's path, they could be dealt with before they became a large threat. I know Kenobi opting to settle on Tatooine for his hermitage to watch over Luke is established, but I like the idea that he was dedicated to avoiding another Vader, even if that meant killing Luke at the first sign of trouble. The Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch itself was never real. It was all an elaborate ruse cooked up by Mike and Josh to lure Heather out into the woods, get her scared and lost, lead her over to the witch house, and then rape and or murder her and leave her corpse somewhere it will never be found. Dark as hell, and I honestly think that in some ways it makes the movie even more scary than if the witch was actually real. As for video games, Mass Effect 3 Indoctrination Theory. Also Cora Harper's, From Me, Andromeda, Father is the Elusive Man. Two come to mind and both are office-based. The first is that Michael Scott is a lot smarter than he appears and acts dumb/ridiculous to keep the office profitable. Having his employees distracted by his random meetings, ideas and shenanigans focuses them on their work when they do get the time to do it. It also keeps Jim and White, total opposites, from killing one another. The second theory is that Kevin is doing something similar. The difference is that he's not putting on a charade for the benefit of Office, he's doing it for himself. He makes himself seem comically dumb to steal money from Dunder Mifflin. It works out as a nice explanation for how he buys the bar later on. These are not canon and most would argue that they are completely ridiculous. I've seen The Office from start to finish so many times that while I agree and do not think they are canon, I enjoy the show more with these theories in place. It helps explain the silliness and helps me re-engage with the show. Brian Griffin suffers from a moderate to severe mental illness which seems to impair his ability to understand the world around him properly. It's why he appears to himself as a dog even though other dogs are incapable of speech or walking on two legs, and why he is able to talk to Stewie even though Stewie is only 1 to 2 years old. He and Stewie's adventures are entirely in his head, and to Stewie they are games that get out of hand, if he is able to properly understand. Lois and Peter take care of him out of love. It's kinda dubious as to why, but there is some respect for Brian. Brian knows he has issues and Quagmire knows, but unlike Lois and Peter who deal with it, he sees Brian as a burden on them who won't get his life in order. In Brain's head his is a misunderstood amazing person, but to everyone else he is very ill. Family Guy's canon is kinda questionable as it is, but I do like this as it adds a darker tinge to Brian and possibly explain that a lot of the narratives in the episodes shown are just in his head like a literal bad author.